learned two hard lessons early in my life. Time doesn't heal wounds, and we can't outrun our problems. I later learned that I would not only survive my trauma, but I would learn to thrive through it. On September 11th, 2001, my world came crumbling down. The planes that pummeled into the Twin Towers killed my father, who worked on the 110th floor of One World Trade. Then, as if this life-altering experience weren't enough, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer a few weeks later. At 13, I went from worrying about whether or not my crush liked me to helping my mom revise her will, choosing my caregiver in case she died. Luckily, my mom survived her first bout of cancer, but still needed the works: a mastectomy, radiation, and chemotherapy. Within the span of a month, both my external and internal worlds had collapsed. I was terrified to feel my emotions. I convinced myself that experiencing even a sliver of grief would unravel me completely. So I did what was safe. I buried my pain, I plastered a smile on my face, and I pretended that I was okay. My grief manifested physically. I suffered from anxiety, migraines, stomach aches, and slept 14 hours a night. I numbed my feelings with popcorn, Oreos, and marshmallow fluff. I feared making friends in high school because I didn't want to be known as that girl whose dad died on 9/11. I thought that I could escape my past by going to school the farthest place I applied. At school in Wisconsin, I introduced myself as a born and raised New Yorker. My peers' eyes widened, and I thought it was because I seemed cool, until they asked, "Were you there on 9/11? Or worse, do you know anyone who died?" I was shocked at first, but it happened over and over again. The mere mention of 9/11 assaulted me. The floor felt like it was caving beneath me. My stomach churned and I wanted to puke. I sometimes froze up and other times just walked away mid-conversation. These invasive questions made me realize that I couldn't escape my past. So I did everything I could to numb, but this time as a college student. I drank heavily, I smoked cigarettes, and I contemplated different ways of killing myself. I knew I couldn't continue on this path, that if I wanted to live, I needed to ask for help. It took me 5 years and 1,000 miles to help me realize that I couldn't run from my pain. If I wanted to heal, I needed to take responsibility. And that was the first time I sought out therapy, my first step towards healing. By my second year in college, I needed to declare a major. I knew I wanted to be in a helping profession. Since I was little, my dad had always emphasized the Jewish principle of tikkun olam, or healing the world. Even at age 5, I wanted to make the world a better place. I enrolled in a nutrition class to fulfill my degree science requirements. And by the end of the semester, I knew I found my true calling. The dynamic relationship between food and our bodies fascinated me, from the physiological and the biochemical to the social, emotional, and cultural layers related to food. I knew that this is how I could help people, and I set upon the path to become a registered dietitian. But when I graduated with my degree in nutrition, I was still struggling with my health. Sitting on the exam table, I told my doctor about the extreme fatigue, my stomach aches, and the joint pain that kept me up at night. "You're 22 years old, you're too young for this," he told me. He mumbled something about hormones before recommending painkillers and dismissing me. I was both furious and confused, but one thing was clear: my doctor wasn't going to help me. I began investigating other options. At the time, I was working for a functional medicine nutritionist who helped me run food sensitivity testing to identify foods creating inflammation in my body. Functional medicine seeks to understand why someone experiences pain and discomfort. It piqued my interest because it provides an alternative perspective to health. Medical school teaches doctors to diagnose and medicate. Have high cholesterol? Take a statin. Have acid reflux? Take an antacid. This works well for emergencies like heart attacks, but is limited in preventing chronic disease and promoting longevity. Instead of focusing on diagnoses and medications, functional medicine practitioners seek to understand why someone is sick. They review detailed questionnaires and run advanced diagnostic testing to address unique imbalances. Functional medicine practitioners receive additional training through master's programs or continuing education. They can be doctors of gynecology, pediatrics, gastroenterology, and psychiatry. They could be dentists, dietitians, and health coaches. The whole body is connected. And when we can understand the root of someone's health imbalances, we can actually resolve their problems rather than masking them with medications. There are myriad factors impacting our health, including nutrition. These factors can be physical, like food sensitivities, nutritional deficiencies, and exposure to toxins. But functional medicine also centers our thoughts, feelings, and lived experiences as an integral part of our health. The body stores emotions, which can lead to high cortisol levels that suppress the immune system and limit our ability to fight infections and tumors. There's no one-size-fits-all model. Each one of us has different imbalances and needs. If you sit on a tack, your butt will hurt, right? The most effective plan of action is to find the tack and pull it out. Functional medicine looks at where those metaphorical tacks are. Tears streamed down my face when I received my food sensitivity results. I was a grilled cheese loving vegetarian who could no longer eat gluten or dairy. But I remembered that valuable lesson that I had learned years earlier, that if I want to heal, I need to take responsibility. My heart sank as I emptied my pantry and scanned the ingredients of every product, quickly realizing that I needed to 180 my diet. But once I eliminated my reactive foods, every single one of my symptoms disappeared. I felt a lightness and a confidence in my body that I had never before experienced. This is the first time I understood the true power of functional medicine nutrition. I wanted to help others heal in the same way, so I began my master's degree in functional medicine. For a long time, I thought that because I experienced such a massive trauma early in my life, that I was off the hook for experiencing more. But that's not how life works. In 2013, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, a cancer entirely separate from her original breast cancer. 2 months after she was diagnosed with lung cancer, my mom died. When the Twin Towers fell, they spewed 10,000 tons of asbestos and other toxins like mercury and dioxins into the air, poisoning us. First my mom, and then me. At 31, I was diagnosed with breast cancer and needed a double mastectomy. Breast cancer is among 69 cancers related to toxic exposure of 9/11. While it runs in my family, I was the youngest to be diagnosed by over 20 years. Upon receiving the news, I sank into self-pity and victimhood. I couldn't escape the pain and the trauma of 9/11. That one horrifying day has been a figurative and literal poison that has seeped into every aspect of my existence. That one act of pure hate and evil has taken so much life from me. Why is this happening to me? Why is this my story? And then I remembered that lesson that I had learned over 13 years earlier, that if I want to heal, I need to take responsibility. We get one body and one life. If this is my story, I'm going to make it a good one. I returned to my Jewish roots. I drew inspiration from my Uma, my grandmother, who had escaped Nazi Germany 87 years earlier. She arrived at Ellis Island in the bottom of a potato sack and built a beautiful life for herself in New York. She raised my father, who became a broadcast engineer without a college degree, and who is proudly stationed on top of the highest building in the Western world, the World Trade Center. My family's legacy is one of survival. When studying functional medicine, I learned about the science of epigenetics, how exposure to stress changes our DNA expression, which is then passed down intergenerationally. But in 2016, researchers at the University of Zurich found that we could reverse the impact of trauma on DNA. They exposed rodents to stress early in life, which resulted in behavioral and genetic changes for both them and their offspring. But they found that they could reverse this impact when they placed the previously traumatized rodents into an enriching environment, improving the health of them and their future generations. Maybe I could evolve my family's narrative. Instead of why me, I started to ask myself, what if I not only survive this, but what if I thrive through this? What if I could transmute the hate of 9/11 into love? What if I could alchemize my pain and my suffering into healing for myself and others? These questions changed my mindset and gave me purpose as I healed from surgery. Having spent over a decade in the wellness world, 31-year-old me had a lot more tools than younger versions of myself. In addition to Western medicine, I integrated functional medicine and wellness practices into my care plan. I supported myself physically with nourishing meals and nutrients. Alongside my surgical team and my oncologist, I built an integrative care team, a therapist, an acupuncturist, a naturopath, a physical therapist, and a lymphatic drainage specialist, among others. The functional medicine paradigm also centers our mental, emotional, and spiritual health. I reached for tools like therapy, journaling, breath work, and my well ancestors to guide me. This time, I didn't resist my feelings. Instead, I embraced them. I allowed myself to wade in the mucky waters of rage. I felt the deep, gut-wrenching grief over losing such a big part of my body so young in my life. I let myself fall apart, knowing that it was a painful moment. There would be a time where I could stitch myself back together. Every single person on the planet will experience pain, like illness or grief. These hardships are just part of being human. We can't control life, but we do get to choose how we show up and care for ourselves through it. We can either choose to ignore our physical and emotional pain, pretending it doesn't exist, and try to numb ourselves like I did all those years ago, or we can choose to respond to our body's cries with care. When it comes to health, it's tempting to take the path of least resistance. Taking an ibuprofen for joint pain and laxatives for constipation is easier than changing your diet and working through the thoughts and emotions driving certain choices. After all, our society is about easy fixes and instant satisfaction. But this also means our society is sicker than ever. Nearly half of the US population, 117 million people, are suffering from a chronic disease related to diet and lifestyle. According to researchers, these diseases, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and even certain cancers can be prevented. When we understand why we're unwell and we address the underlying imbalances, we choose a different path forward, one towards true healing, renewal, and change. A client in my functional medicine nutrition practice was suffering from pain associated with her IBS and endometriosis. Her gynecologist gave her two options: undergo extensive surgery or start medications with debilitating side effects. Together, we identified sources of her inflammation and addressed her nutritional imbalances. We were so successful that she opted out of both surgery and medication. Another client of mine was struggling with her body image and turned to food for comfort. Our work revealed how her emotionally abusive mother was still impacting her, even decades later. Building awareness helped us pave a path to further explore the beliefs and the emotions attached to her tumultuous childhood. This ultimately helped her find more appreciation and compassion for her body and more confidence in herself. Healing is a lifelong process with infinite layers. Each person is so different. By excavating the deepest parts of my grief and having a willingness to sit with my discomfort has expanded my capacity for joy and infused my life with a childlike wonder of how much healing we're all truly capable of. Traumatic experiences deeply impact the health of our bodies and our minds. While we can't control what happens to us, we do get to choose how we show up and care for ourselves through life's inevitable challenges. And functional medicine provides us a framework for lifelong healing. When we bravely take ownership over our health and truly examine the sources of our pain, our lives can transform beyond what we ever imagine. Thank you.